9:30, and in the last few minutes, the government has issued a statement about the badger cull in the West Country. It's admitted that marksmen have failed to kill as many animals as intended, and it's planning to seek approval to extend the cull for another 2 or 3 weeks. In Somerset, they'd only reached 60% of their target when the cull finished yesterday. In Gloucestershire, they're also struggling with the numbers. The news will be an embarrassment to the government department, DEFRA, which has always been confident the pilot would be a success. Here's our political editor, Paul Baltrop.
Culling badgers has been hugely controversial and difficult. They were called pilot culls for a reason. Badgers have been killed before using cage trapping or gassing, but free shooting was unprecedented. Marksmen were licensed to lay in wait near badger sets and shoot them when they came out to feed on bait. In Somerset, the target was 2,100, but they managed only 1,200, despite buying in more staff, assisted by a badger control expert.
In my book, it's probably a failure, numbers-wise. Shooting is unproven, so we don't know the effect of a badger being shot on what the effect is on the rest of the social group, whether they just bolt and go. We don't know that for sure. It might be just a resource problem, that they actually underestimate how many men they needed on the ground or how many traps they needed. So like I said, the NFU would have learnt a lot from this.
It's similar in West Gloucestershire, where 2,900 badgers are due to die by next Monday. The government tonight admits numbers are falling well short. Here in the fields of Gloucestershire, marksmen, protesters and police are once again out tonight. But instead of it being just for a few more days, this could continue for several more weeks, as the government's controversial culling policy teeters on the brink. It'll give plenty of ammunition to opponents and a headache for ministers who'll face the cameras tomorrow.
Well, Paul is with me now. Paul, how are the government explaining this tonight?
Well, this afternoon, DEFRA called in journalists for a confidential briefing ahead of this dramatic announcement this evening. They stressed that what had happened so far had been safe and humane, but what it clearly hasn't been is effective. Those are the criteria by which this cull must be judged. They're applying for a 2 to 3 week extension in Somerset and also certainly in Gloucestershire.
What about the protesters? What are they likely to be saying?
Well, the news is only just breaking, but they had a sense that things were certainly not going the cull operators' way, and they had been prepared to get their people out, keep their people out in the field, to work harder to try to stop the shooting taking place. But it's interesting to get a scientific voice on this. I've talked this evening to Professor John Bourne. He was the one that led the original culling trials here in the West Country 10 years ago. And he says what's happened so far, he describes as a complete bloody disaster. Those are his words. What he says may well happen is that badger groups have been disturbed by the shooting so far. They will then spread out, move around much more than they would have otherwise, and a very high chance that this disease, bovine tuberculosis, which everyone is trying to prevent, will in fact end up being spread even further amongst cattle.
OK, Paul, thank you very much indeed. Right, let's move on to the